I'm gonna mix this pretty good and hot. I have to wait too long on it.
We got to look at fiberglass repair and fitting body panels.
Today I'm gonna fit the front end parts, put the fenders on, fit the hood and the front nose cone, the deck lid and the end caps. Also gonna put on the side scoops. It's mostly mock up all the body for the car today.
Some body work will be done on the car, some off.
One thing I've already done is I've already fit the doors. I've got the gap real nice right through here on both sides. The doors fit good, shut good. That's your starting point. So this door isn't gonna move. If it was on a rotisserie, you could actually bow it. This way is a lot easier. The bottom's all painted, the suspension's done. We can align the panels where they're gonna be aligned. What I'll do is I'll actually align the front end, put the front fender on, we'll fit everything, I'll do the body work, and then it'll be disassembled. All of this area was painted from the factory at the same time. So this cowling, the flanges, the hinges, the door actually had the latch in it because these screws are supposed to be painted body color, but the latch plate was removed and the door would swing open and shut and you could spray the door jam and all that at the same time. That way there's no tape edges. So right now I'm going to use put the first fender on, line them, get the gaps right, and then we'll try the nose cone out.
How many bolts do you put in?
Right now I'm just going to use 3. They also have a sealer that runs underneath this lip. It's like a dum-dum sealer that keeps debris and stuff out of the engine compartment. So if you go through a puddle and hit mud, it won't have mud all up on top of your engine compartment.
For now, you don't need that, right?
Yeah, you want to be able to move the fender freely wherever you want it. That'll be on the final assembly. I'll leave the bolts loose. That way I can achieve the door gap. And I want the door gap a little bigger on the front than the back. That way you have plenty of clearance. When the door opens, it doesn't chip the paint. So I usually like to have it a little under 1/4 inch. That's about where I want to set it. And how every car fits a little different. I want to kind of lock that in place. Now I'm going to put the bottom bolt in. Now the bottom bolt, usually you got to put a few shims. The factory used basically a washer, and they were about 1/16 of an inch thick. This one feels like probably a couple of shims. And then you can move this back and forth to get the gap that you want. You want to set it about right there, and you want it nice and flush with the rocker panel. I use a slightly longer bolt on the bottom. That way you can actually shim it, and it has extra threads for if you're going to shim it. I'm going to try a couple washers, see how that works.
Now, once you get this figured out, then you have it set for later, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many shims it takes. Since I'm going to be painting with the fenders off, you want to make sure that they fit well. The factory painted them with the fenders off, so I'll have the fenders in front of the car on 2 tables, so they'll be painted at the same time. That way it has a perfect match, but there'll be no tape lines, just like factory. Okay, that fit pretty good. You usually got to shim it depending on how your body line lines up. You got to shim it up or down. There's also a bolt that goes into the door jamb, which takes a little bracket. That's not on the car right now, which that gives this support. It's black and remains black, so it'll have to be installed after the car is painted. Now we'll start on the other side. Get the fender on. Now I'm putting the actual Shelby parts. This is the nose cone support bracket. It uses part of the front fender bolts. Factions right in here on these support brackets. And then the center latch bracket mounts right here. It has been repaired and painted. These have a slotted hole. So if you put it behind the bracket, you have a little more movement. If you need to move it up just a little more, if you put it in front, it'll hit the brace itself. This is how it will be installed later. Yeah, all this will come back off. This is be just a mock-up. See how everything fits.
Or is that normal to mock everything up?
It's pretty normal if you want a decent job. There's some shops that won't, yeah. Especially on fiberglass parts. Fiberglass parts never fit right. Go ahead and stick this in there. This is the latch reinforcement.
That's not even the latch, is it? That's the reinforcement.
Yeah, this is where the striker goes for the latch. Just to try everything out, make sure it all fits good. Yeah, this has the brackets for the inboard.
So Jason, pretty soon it'll start looking like a Shelby, huh?
Yeah, it'll look like a car again. A lot of these parts haven't been on in over 40 years. The main reason you want to try everything out.
So people take these parts off and they never get them back on.
Yeah. Of course, taking these fiberglass parts off and they sit for all that length of time and they're hot and cold, they will change shape ever so slightly. Right here, you have the adjustment. And this reinforcement will actually move up and down so that you can get the right alignment at the tops of the fenders.
How's it fitting?
So far, a little tight, but it's going on.
Well, that fit in there snugly.
It is snug. Now these rivet holes right here, where they rivet it to this inner structure, line up to the original holes just right. Like right here, you can see when I push it together where it needs to go, it lines up that hole in there.
So, no body damage, and this is the original nose that came on this car from Shelby American.
Now we'll align the fenders. You can move the fender in and out. We want to get that real close where it's nice and flush.
Okay.
That fits actually really well. Now you can see it has a little bit of a gap through here where it needs to be pulled up, but it's achievable, so you pull that up. It fits nice here. The body line is actually off a little bit. It's a little higher than where the body line is, so it's off about 1/4 of an inch. You can do one of two things. You can move the nose cone down, align the body line, but then you got a gap up here. So it's kind of whatever you want to fix easier. You can either resculpt the body line and add filler or something to the top of the nose cone, or you can push this up, get it flush with the fender, and then resculpt the body line, which is actually a little easier. This can be ground in, worked in, with less filler, less work than trying to put a bunch of filler across the top of the cone when you can just pull it up and bolt it in place. Now on the other side, and the body line lines up on this side. It's flush with the fender. This side fits a lot better. Right here lines up nice. Right through here, time it's bolted up, we'll pull that in, suck that up, but it will have to have some material right through here added. So next we'll try out our hood. This hood is close to the original as you can buy. It's hand-laid fiberglass. So it's the bottom of it is just as original. It's a relator version hood. They had two hoods that they used. They had one that had steel reinforcement, and then this has the glass reinforcement, and then has steel inserts for the latch, and there's a hinge plate that's riveted for reinforcement. This is as close to original as you can buy reproduction. Any original hood, 95% of them, they're going to be bowed right through the middle because of the springs. And if they didn't have the springs, they had the prop rod, which is the difference between that is some of them did have a prop rod. Some of them have the low tension spring. If they have the low tension spring, they will bow due to the heat. I prefer to use a new hood anyways.
Why? Look at this old original.
This hood has been repaired right here bad in this corner. See the globule of fiberglass. It would have to be all ground out and start over. Both of these mounting points have been repaired, and it was real bad repair. Both of the bolting plates are gone, so you can't even put a bolt in it. This one are both rusted, so these would have to be cut out, put a new hinge plate in there, and completely reglassed. The bad part of this hood also is it is extremely bowed. So the amount of time you would put in this hood, it's not worth truly saving it. It's an original Shelby hood, but it's never gonna fit quite right. Also, this area here where the striker plate holds has a lot of rust in it. The problem is this is hand-laid fiberglass, so it has a texture to it, the hand-laid, and you can't really sand on it because you'd smooth it out, and that would take away from the look. And what you could do is you can sand it, block it, get it all straight, and then take you some fiberglass, and then basically hand lay it to get the look. This will be a mock-up. We're going to see how good this hood actually fits and what modifications we're going to need to do to the edges to get a perfect fit. We'll see the difference between the reproduction and the original. What I usually do is slide it all the way forward on the hinge. You can always slide it back, that way it doesn't chip the hood or chip the primer on the cow panel. Don't worry about the springs yet. The springs can change the way the hinge reacts. Looks pretty good. It fits nice here, the curve. It needs a little bit of trimming around the edge, but it actually does fit both curves. It lines up, the body line lines up nice. This gap's really nice here. That's about what we want to achieve, and it fits nice with the curve here. It needs some blocking and a little bit of work, but for initial fit, it actually fits pretty nice. The whole hood will need to be blocked. The edge right in here, it's a little rough, not real square compared to the steel. The gap is nice. Got a good even gap across the back. You can see as it gets into the corner right here, it gets a little tight, so that edge will need to be taken off just a little bit so that's a perfectly even gap all the way through. We want the gap on the other side to match this gap. That comes pretty close to the end of the nose cone. See right here, the nose cone comes out a little further than the hood. Me personally, I would like it to be both perfectly flush, so I'll probably add some glass to the front edge of this hood about 1/4 of an inch. That way these are both perfectly flush together.
You're gonna have to glass that?
Yeah, you have to grind it down and put a little fiberglass right on the edge and build that edge out. This edge right here, you can notice, slightly bows out. It's perfect pretty much all the way until here has a slight bow out, which you can fix that with a block. You can run a tape line and then take a block and actually block that material off and get it a perfect gap. That's the difference between a steel hood and a fiberglass. You can take off, you can manipulate it, modify it, This gap here is pretty even, other than in the back, it gets a little tight. So then I'll have to run a tape edge and then take off a little material on the back corner.
What about this edge here, same?
This edge here is a little wide compared to the Fender, so there'll actually have to be some glass added to the nose cone. Run a tape edge, see how much needs to be added, fill this in, block it, sand it, mold it back in to where this gap is even with the Fender gap. Same way with up here. This needs some added to the hood to bring this out level with the nose. So there's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of hours to get all this fitting just right, but this is a good mock-up of how it's going to fit, what needs to be done. Nothing major. It's about average. Now, originally, this gap here, that is probably how it was from Shelby originally. It probably had a big gaps like that. I'm going to make it where it fits better.
Would some people say then this should be correct and should be left? Would some people argue?
Some people argue, oh, you need to leave it because that's original. Right, here's one of the upper side scoops. I've actually stripped it and worked it. So we're just going to throw a full mock-up today of the car's body. So we're going to go ahead and put these side scoops on. This is the reproduction one on this side.
We were missing one lower side scoop.
These were just bolted on the car, 2 studs, and on the assembly manual they actually used a sealer all the way around the scoop to seal it to the body. So on final assembly, once everything's painted, I'll use a sealer around it. This is the original side scoop. All these scoops have been stripped down to bare fiberglass, and then I've worked them with a glaze filler to get the slight ripples and waves out of the top surface. This one's the last original one. This one here fits real nice all the way around the car. Nothing needed. Now on this one over here, this is how it was manufactured. You can see it has a gap across the bottom. What they did was they glued these studs on. One's missing here because I imagine it was in such a wrong place they actually broke it off on purpose. They have the tendency to point different ways. Now in order to fix that gap, I'll have to break this one out and put it in a different location and re-glue it. Not a big deal, but that's how they fit from the factory. They would have had that big gap right across the bottom. Now I'm going to install the deck lid. First I'll install the end caps. These take just a 1/4 inch bolt like that with a washer. And I'm not going to tighten them because I want to be able to move them so that I can move it to fit up to the trunk lid to achieve the best fitment possible. So I'm going to leave it loose where I can move it where it fits at the top, fits at the bottom. It does fit very nice with the quarter panel all the way around. So the contours of the quarter fits very nice. This one as well, it does have a nice fit. It does have some slight ripples in the glass, which is just how fiberglass is, which I have to be a real light glaze coating and block down to get it where it's perfectly straight.
And our Shelby was starting to look like a Shelby.
The underside of this deck lid, you can see it's a black, and then it has red overspray. That is actually how they were done from Shelby. This is original, and it's in good enough shape I can probably actually clean it and save it. They were just painted black, and then the overspray as they painted it's kind of flowed in. The hood is done the exact same way. Went ahead and I've installed the latch and the striker. You can move here back and forth, and then right here it has adjustment on the hinge itself for up and down. Originally on the metal trunk lids, this torsion rod would have been affixed to the deck lid with a little bracket. And Shelby didn't do that, they just let the rod float. Trunk lid doesn't fit very good. It's typical original fiberglass. Right here you can tell that the corner is way too low. And then it's high right here. So this was just manufactured that way. This corner's low. Opposite on the other side. The corner's too high. The gap's pretty decent. Now we'll check and see if this how this fit originally. Now this was bowed up, so as you see, there's no marking where this steel right here imprinted into that. This side, the steel has an imprint in it where it's too low. Well, that's how they fit. That's how it's always been. This side here was tighter than that side. Now the way I'm going to fix that is this side can probably use a shim right here, because I've actually looked at the hinge. The hinge needs to come up. It's all the way up. It's bottomed out, so we can't move the hinge up anymore. I could take the hinge out, take a drill or a carbide bit and wallet a hole out to give it a little more adjustment. What I'm going to try, I want to put a 1/16 inch shim in between the deck lid and the hinge and see what that actually does. Now on the other side, we have some room to bring the hinge down a little bit. So we can move this down and get this fitting a little flusher. Okay, I moved it about an 1/8 of an inch. Let's see how that works. It's definitely better here. It's still a little in the middle, kind of like it has a bow in it. So bring it down a little bit more. What I want to do is achieve the best possible fit by manipulating the hinges, moving the trunk lid, and then you'll know what you have to modify as far as glass. Pull it this way a little bit. Move it forward a little bit.
Was it not closing?
I was trying to get it centered in the hole as best as possible.
What do you think now? How's this side?
It's getting a little better. Oh. One typical thing you see in pictures of these cars is the misfitting between the end cap and the trunk lid right here. You'll see some that fit perfect like that. This one sticks up a little bit. Now, what's nice about having the original weather stripping in it is it's already broke in. You put a new weather stripping in it, it sets a little high. This, you can move the striker down a little bit on the latch, but you want to achieve this to be perfect. Because that's one thing you always notice it really stands out is when these don't fit.
Mechanical adjustment can only do so much.
That's it, super easy fix. Even if you get it fitting all right where you want it and it still sticks up, you can add some glass to whichever one's lower and then just file it. So say this end cap, it's going to fit a little lower no matter what. Time you get it aligned with the quarter. Well, I can add fiberglass to this piece here and build this up and then work it in until that's a perfect fit. The gap fits pretty good. It's a tighter gap, but it's not a bad gap. It needs a little bit of adjusting. These body lines here are matching up, Most of the time on the fiberglass, the body lines are really too rounded. So you got to block them in to where these lines come in just right where and then they fade away as they come down the deck lid. Same with the body line in the middle. It's pretty seen in the steel and then it disappears. And it's actually there, but it's pretty rounded off. So I'm going to have to put a little filler and actually make this a little more pointy. But overall, it fits pretty decent. This right here, this corner is a little low, but not horrible. It just needs to be probably built up with a little glass and worked in. We'll see. This actually fits pretty flush here. One side sticks up, one side's flush. So overall, it's a good fit. It's like the front. It's going to take some massaging and a little bit of work to get it to fit perfect.
Same fit problems with another 67 Shelby in Jason's shop.
Now, if you actually break through the glass, then you have to go in there and use fiberglass and re-glass it. But if you don't break through, you just need a filling property and a glue. And then once I put the filler on there, I'll just block it down. Get that edge, all that right where you want it. Where the body line's coming up on the steel, I'll run a tape line there and where the next body line is, and then I'll give a location. So run the tape lines where I want the body lines, and I'll actually block that fiberglass and put those sharp, crisp lines back in there. When it's all said and done, I'll actually have filler over this whole deck lid and work it all in to where it's all perfect and then primer it. Probably add glass to this edge right here to build this up about 1/4 of an inch, and then bring that and taper that glass in to get rid of this overhang. I'm gonna mask it off a little bit first. I'm gonna leave it on the car. That way I can get the height with the fiberglass that I need, and then I'll actually remove it and let it dry.
Fiberglass repair will put your OWL factory system on high alert. Yes, sir. Totally necessary with the Shelby, which has lots of fiberglass parts, the biggest of which is that large fiberglass nose that extends that front end. This is the original, made of hand-laid fiberglass. Upper and lower side scoops are also fiberglass and use the same methods to repair.
Uppers, lower.
Another fiberglass piece, that rear taillight panel that encases the bright red Cougar lights. And what about
See these end caps?
another fiberglass piece, as is that deck lid with the flip up rear spoiler.
And there should be a body line, real faint body line right here. Anywhere from 20-30 hours plus to get one of these fitting properly. This one has an extreme low spot right here with the end cap. So you can either re-glass the end cap to meet the steel, same way right here. And you kind of want to get it in a general location lined up to the body line. These are never level. These are always off. I always want these perfectly level. It's very liquidy and it will run everywhere. So you want to mask it. You don't want it running all inside the car and everything else. Masking it off so the resin won't run where I don't want it to. Dam it, that way if it runs down it'll stop it. That way it don't run into the inside of the trunk or down the steel. I'll actually be using a fiberglass mat on this. This is the actual fiberglass, nothing special. You can get these stuff about anywhere, parts store. You can cut out small pieces and build it up like basically paper mache, or you can break it up and mix it with the resin and then build it up that way. I kind of do a mixture of both. So I got to build up that corner. It's about that area, so I'll cut the glass. You want it thick, build it up higher, then you can sand it down and work it. This is the fiberglass resin. I use a lot of Evercoat products and use a fiberglass resin hardener in it. The more hardener you put in it, the hotter it'll get. It takes at least 24 hours for it to actually really set up and be cured out. It's just a resin hardener catalyst. I'm going to mix this pretty good and hot. I don't want to have to wait too long on it. Yeah, it's a pretty thick, looks a lot like primer. If you're doing a small repair out spot like we are, you can mix it up real hot. If you're doing a large area, you want to mix it where it dries slow and you can have the time to actually work the air bubbles out. Now you can cut your little pieces, or you can actually tear this stuff apart. And mix it in with the resin. And then that gives you the mat and everything together. That's good for spot repairs, like on the back side of that nose where it has cracks and stuff. You V them out and mix it up like that, and then just smooth it out. And then you can take a grinder, hit it down, and then you can sand it like a filler and shape it however you want it. That's just a small little build-up area, so we're not getting too crazy with this. Lay out a few pieces. We get the glass good and soaked up. It'll change color once it's from white to the resin color. You can dip this in to the resin and soak it up. We'll just keep building that up until we get the height we want there on that corner. This is just a small demonstration of how fiberglass works. Reach the height of the quarter panel. So you can take some of the resin with the fibers mixed in, and we'll brush the whole area and build up the whole, kind of blend it all out. And in we have plenty of area and resin that we can shape all that. Then I'll fine tune it later on. After you get that ground down and shaped, you can use the vet adhesive and filler and use that to fine tune it and get it perfect. And then you can even use a regular body filler as well. Now we'll come over to that side stoop with the cracks in it. Take a little bit of this resin, and then I'm going to brush new resin over those cracks.
This rejuvenates that fiberglass?
Yeah, it's just like relayering it, fill in all those cracks.
Is this something typically that a Shelby restorer would do with a 67? Or?
You're going to have to. That, or a lot of guys will just kind of basically put body filler over that, and then down the road you're going to see all them cracks come back through. So it depends on how you repair those cracks, if you see them come back through or not.
Did you do this with my 67?
Oh yeah. I also had to add glass to the edges of the hood. Like right here, on this corner, I actually ground it down to fit the deck lid a little better. So I had some big pinholes and stuff, so I'm using a little bit of resin and fill in those pinholes and give it a little more strength since I took so much off. I'm going to add a little to the edge because I actually ground down this edge here to fit the deck lid better. And this has fiberglass in it, so the more you kind of build it up and build it up. This has a little bit of a crack there on the edge. I'm going to build it up. I V'd it out. I'm going to fill that in with a little resin. You can see that it had a couple pinholes in there from prior repair. Right on the edge of that corner there. I'll check this and see. You kind of got to keep brushing it, moving it around till it sets up. Once it sets up, it'll be fine, but it will want to run off. That takes about 6-7 hours to dry. You want to definitely mask it off well.
Would you use the same methods to fix this nose?
Yeah, it'll be the same exact method. Right now, I'll put a heat lamp on it. Set that up a lot quicker. I use an angle grinder, like a 40 grit, pretty fine, and kind of knock it down. Get this slag, some of that kind of off there, and then fine tune it with a block and actually just work it like a filler. Just kind of knock it down. basic knockdown, open it up. Then I'll use a block, just fine tune it. Get a little more rounder block where I can work the area that I built up. See, we're flush with that quarter now, pretty much. Still got a lot of fine tuning to do. Got this grinder here, can get into tight little spots. It's got a 50 grit belt on it, like a little belt sander. I'm gonna get it and I'm going to remove it and do the edge, do a little more fine tune on it, and then I'll do the vet adhesive and filler and put a coat of that on there and fine tune it with the vet adhesive. You can see now that it's flush, so we brought it up good 1/4 of an inch. It's on there good enough to hold it in place.
How's it look?
Pretty good now. I'll put some of the filler on it, and that'll fine tune it. Use the vet adhesive on it now. We'll fine tune it, get it a lot straighter. Because it's still by far not even close. It's just roughed out right now. Tape off the quarter because I don't want any of the vet adhesive on the metal. And then later on, when I use actual body filler, I can coat both of the panels at the same time and work them and then cut the groove. But this is the vet adhesive will be more of a second stage over the glass, fill in the pinholes and stuff like that. This will fill in, shape it a little better and fill in the pinholes.
That's thicker than maple syrup, isn't it?
Yeah. The benefit of this, it's not only a filler, it's a glue as well. It's an adhesive. You can glue fiberglass together with it. That's why it's called vet adhesive. So if you're restored Corvettes, you're very familiar with this stuff. This is a little more runnier than a regular filler. We'll fill in the pinholes and blend in of the quarter panel. Now we'll let that dry and work it in. That'll be real nice rough out.
Once you sand this off, is this the last thing you do before you start your priming?
No, I'll actually use a body filler and fine tune it even more. And after this point though, once this is kind of worked in, it's the same process as the steel. And you don't have to use the vet adhesive over your glass like that. You could use regular body filler, but I always use the bed adhesive. This will actually increase the strength of the part. When body filler is just a filler, it doesn't give any structural support like this does, because this is an actual adhesive.
So I can see it's still tacky. How long does it take to dry?
What I actually like to do on that is let it dry overnight until really the next day.
So is that thing dried?
Yeah, the bed adhesive is dry. Started sanding on it, filing it down. We got the corner pretty much matched up, like a little bit more sanding on that. I started out with an 80 grit, finished sanding it with 100, and then once it's pretty close, I'll leave it a little high, I'll finish it out with 180. These small blocks and these end caps actually use more of that front corner than anything, because it just fits right in there. You just kind of roll that in there, or you can also use the edge and roll it like that. When I'm blending the two panels together, I'll sand them both at the same time. That way they're real nice and level. Considering that was 1/4 of an inch low, you can see it's really not too thick. Right there's fiberglass. The actual filler is maybe 1/16 of an inch. If you wanted to fine tune it, you could go with this premium filler here and go back over it with that and really kind of smooth it out and really fine tune it. But it's so close, I don't really want to put any more filler on it because it's really feels good. A deck lid, I've got it all fitting now. See this corner here where it was fitting before, it was about a good 1/2 of an inch low. All this was low. All the gaps were really bad. So I trimmed the deck lid to where all the gaps are nice and even. So you can see the gaps are even on the back. It's flush with the end cap here on both sides. The gap is pretty even all the way around. Way far better than it ever was. All the quarter panel in the trunk is all level. You can see that it has the lines real distinctive now. When before the lines weren't even there, it was just basically rounded off. It's got a real nice sharp body line in the middle now, and that body line actually tapers down and ends about right here, and it just kind of tapers away. And just run a perfectly straight line, and then I'll just work that block up to that line. That'll give you a real nice, crisp, sharp body line there. And if it's a rounded off body line, time you spray primer and you wet sand over it, it'll round it off and give it a little bit of roundness, but you want it sharp. Same way with the body lines here that run all the way down this whole body here. I usually do at the outside line here. I'll come way up high where these actually taper off and disappear as well. I'll run that and then block into that line. That'll give you a real nice sharp line. It'll make it identical to your quarter panel. And then once that one's real nice and sharp, blow it off and move to the next one. Make it all the lines exactly the way you want them. Starting out with the premium filler, I knock it down and sand most of it with a 100 grit and then finish it out with a 180. Right now this deck lid is ready for the first primer. Once I get it lined up, I'll drill a 1/8 inch hole, and then you can put a punch in there and it'll automatically line it right back to where it was, instead of having to move it around a bunch and take a chance of chipping paint. Small parts, I'll actually hang them up. I'll be primed the same primer. Spray that. I'm just going to mask this edge off because I'm going to be spraying a lot of primer. So just go ahead and mask it off. main tail panel. That's from a Cal Automotive. That's the original one for this particular car. These scoops on. Every panel on this car is the same process, regardless of how small it may be. Here's original glass. It's just solid little pinholes. All that has to be smeared in. This is a alcohol-based cleaner. If you have to clean as you're painting, if you're using air tool, or if you have grease on your hands or something, it will take that contaminant off. Okay, I'm going to mix the primer. First thing I'm going to do is change the tip on this gun to a slightly bigger tip. This product is a thicker primer than the K38, so this gun's set up for K38. I'm going to a 1.3 tip, quite a bit larger tip. Yes, it has a very quick cure time. Is what makes this product a very good product. It's one full tube per quart, but in hot weather, if you mix a whole tube of this in a quart, it'll dry so fast that you can't even get out of the gun. And I'm actually going to do about half a tube hardener in that. Definitely always want to strain. I usually spray this around 29 psi with this tip. Some people refer to this type of primer as a body man in a can because of the properties. It has such a high blocking properties. It's almost like a spray glaze. Okay, it's the first coat primer. Let that dry for about 3 to 4 minutes till it flashes off, and then start on the next coat. Air in it won't allow the primer to go down in it, so you have to actually smear the primer down into that pinhole. Smear that, spray another, smear that, and do it a slow process. Because if you do like a whole panel, you'll never get the whole panel done before it starts setting up to where you can't smear it in. It needs to be pretty wet to smear it in so that it'll get down into pinholes. The filler itself will have pinholes in it, but that fiberglass is just solid, absolutely solid pinholes, and a lot of them are pretty good size. I mean, tons and tons of tiny ones. So you just basically smear the whole entire surface of that end cap or side scoop. Even the deck lid was just basically 95% pinholes.
3 weeks or so to let the primer cure, get all the thinners out and everything.
Currently, I've just finished doing the body work on the trunk lid and the hood. The nose cone is finished, and when we did the fitting, it did not fit real good. This has been fitted, worked. I installed the studs and glued them in. There were no studs at all. Backside I have ready for paint. Well, it's all been scuffed up, cleaned up. The hood.
Well, we didn't get one. It was missing in the barn where we found the car. So we bought a reproduction, hand-laid fiberglass, just like the original. Still needed work at the corners.
It's a vet adhesive and filler. It's a glue and a filler all in one. I also used it in the back corners to get it to fit and to have the gap and everything. So I went back with vet adhesive and reinforced the back corner just so it'd be super strong. This is actually what they use to glue the Corvettes together with. It's an adhesive. It's not only a filler, but it's glue as well. You can glue 2 panels of fiberglass together with this.
So every corner has a little work to it.
Yeah, these corners I actually used glass and hand laid the glass in there, and then went back with the vet adhesive to reinforce it and fill in the pinholes. Now the early hoods had a complete steel inner structure and then put a glass on top of it. So this has a full fiberglass reinforcement, and they put steel reinforcements where the latch was and where the hinge bolts.
Oh, right here?
Yeah, you can see where the rivets are, and the threaded holes are on a steel plate that runs the length of this. And that's exactly how the original ones were as well.
So my car would have had hood just like this.
Yeah, this is exactly in every detail like the original hood. The only difference is this hood is probably a little bit lighter. It's probably a little bit straighter, but it's not original. You can actually see this color of how they bonded these two together. That is, it's the same material as the vet adhesive. That is vet adhesive. You see the color here matches this stuff. This is what they use to glue stuff together. So that's why you use a vet adhesive. I use this on the nose cone and the deck lid as the filler. So if you're gonna fill in like an edge, you wanna bring an edge up or something, I use the vet filler and adhesive because it's a lot stronger and won't crack out like Bondo. Yes, I use it on the complete top. I had to fill in the edges through here a little bit with this gap where the hood sits. And then I had to use a lot of it throughout the whole nose cone to fill in pinholes. Lots and lots of little pinholes and voids. Because this was hand-laid fiberglass, so when you start sanding in on the glass, you'll hit little air bubbles and it causes pinholes.
How do we know this is the original nose cone?
Well, one of the main reasons that this is the original is the pop rivet holes across here. They line up perfectly to the reinforcement brace.
These little holes?
Yeah, and is the original reinforcement brace. This was not replaced in the 80s or anything like that. The reinforcement brace actually had quite a bit of pitting, so it was definitely an original piece.
This is what gives it such distinctive looks, is this nose piece and the grill, right?
Yeah, and this is, of course, you can see the texture on it. It's hand-laid fiberglass, just as the originals. They do reproduce these, and they were far superior to these because they're vacuum formed. So the backside on a modern one would be way smoother. That's one of the telltale signs is the hand-laid fiberglass. Just as the hood. The hood is a reproduction, but we didn't go with the vacuum formed one. We went with the hand-laid so they would have an original look.